For decades, pop culture has fed us this exact image. The big, strong caveman providing for the weak, helpless cave woman. It's in our movies, our cartoons, and our jokes. We picture women hiding in caves, terrified of the outside world, just waiting for the men to bring back the meat. But there's just one tiny problem. It is a 100% absolute lie. Recent archaeological discoveries and DNA analysis of ancient graves have completely shattered this myth. In 2020, scientists excavated a 9,000-year-old grave in the Andes Mountains. Inside, they found a body buried with an elite, massive hunting toolkit: spearheads, skinning knives, and stone blades. For decades, archaeologists assumed these heavily armed bodies were male. But DNA testing proved a shocking truth. This elite apex predator was a woman, and she wasn't an exception. Studies now show that in prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies, up to 50% of big game hunters were female. Women weren't just sitting in caves making berry smoothies, they were taking down mammoths. Let's look at the sheer physical capabilities of an ancient human female. If we put a modern professional athlete next to a prehistoric cave woman, the comparison would be terrifying. Early human females possessed bone density and muscle mass that rivaled today's elite Olympians. When it came to explosive power, vertical jumping capability, and sheer running stamina, they were unmatched. Their bodies were built for endurance hunting, running down massive wild animals until the prey simply collapsed from exhaustion. For over 200,000 years, human societies were fiercely egalitarian. That means total, brutal equality. Survival was so difficult that there was no room for weak links. Everyone had to pull their weight. Men hunted, men gathered, women gathered. There was no boss, no property, and definitely no patriarchy. They were completely free. But around 10,000 years ago, someone somewhere planted a tiny seed in the ground. And that single, seemingly harmless action became the trap that would lock away women's freedom for the next 10 millennia. Welcome to the agricultural revolution. Humans stopped moving and started settling down. Instead of chasing food, we grew it. For the first time in history, we had a surplus. We had more food than we could eat in a single day. And with surplus came a brand new, extremely dangerous concept: wealth. Before this, nobody owned the forest. Nobody owned the wild deer. But now, you could own a piece of land. You could own the grain it produced. Man didn't just want to survive anymore. He wanted to accumulate. He looked at his field, drew a line in the dirt, and said the deadliest word in human history: mine. But this new lifestyle came at a horrific physical cost, and the evidence is permanently carved into human bones. When archaeologists compare the skeletons of female hunter-gatherers to the skeletons of early farming women, the difference is heartbreaking. The hunter-gatherer women had strong, balanced leg bones from miles of walking and running. But the early agricultural women? Their toes were severely deformed. Their knees were crushed. Their lower backs showed signs of brutal, repetitive stress fractures. Why? Because the invention of farming meant that women were suddenly confined to the settlement. Their new primary job was kneeling on hard stone floors for 6 to 10 hours a day, using heavy rocks to grind tough wheat into flour. They traded the open horizon for a stone grinding bowl. The elite huntress became a human machine. As men accumulated land, houses, and cattle, a massive psychological shift happened. A man wanted his hard-earned property to go to his children after he died. He wanted to secure his bloodline. But here was the ultimate biological catch. A woman always knows with 100% certainty that a baby is hers. A man? Before modern DNA testing, a man could never be truly sure. This paranoia, this deep, agonizing fear of leaving his wealth and his land to another man's child, forced him to build a system of total control. To ensure his property went to his actual biological son, man needed a guarantee. He needed exclusive, unquestionable access to a woman's reproduction. And so, a new concept was invented. It was not a romance. It was not a love story. It was a strict, legally binding property contract. Today, we call it marriage. In ancient societies, the laws became brutally clear. A woman went from being an equal, free-roaming hunter to becoming the literal property of her father, and then, upon marriage, the property of her husband. Her entire existence was confined to the home, strictly guarded to protect the bloodline. To see exactly how paranoid these early property owners were, we just have to look at the first written laws in human history. Look at the Code of Hammurabi from ancient Babylon or the Middle Assyrian laws. These weren't just guidelines, they were absolute systems of terror. Under these ancient laws, if a man slept around, it was considered entirely normal and legally ignored. But female sexuality was suddenly treated as a threat to the economic system. If a married woman even stepped outside her house without permission, she could be legally beaten. In ancient Assyria, the laws surrounding the veil were terrifying. Respectable, owned women, meaning wives and daughters of property owners, were legally forced to wear a veil whenever they went outside. It was a physical marker showing the world, "This woman is my property, do not touch." If a slave woman or a prostitute dared to wear a veil, the punishment was having her clothes stripped off and her ears cut off. Women were fully reduced to commodities. They were a currency used to build alliances, merge lands, and secure peace between warring tribes. Fathers would trade their daughters to other property owners in exchange for cattle, grain, or political favors. The fierce huntress who once took down wild beasts was now a bargaining chip traded for a herd of cows. To enforce this massive loss of freedom, the culture had to change. The human mind had to be completely rewired. For thousands of years before farming, early humans worshipped female deities. They worshipped Mother Nature and the goddess of fertility. This made perfect sense to them. Life came from women, and nature provided the food. The earliest religious artifacts ever found are small stone statues of pregnant women, revered as the givers of all life. But when men took control of the land, they rewrote the heavens. The female creators were pushed out. In came the fierce male sky gods, gods of war, gods of rules, gods of property. The new religious texts were written by men for men. These new mythologies declared that it was the divine order of the universe for women to submit to men. It wasn't just the law of the king anymore. It was the ultimate will of the gods. If a woman rebelled, she wasn't just breaking a property contract. Ta was committing a sin against the universe. The psychological trap was now perfectly sealed. This brutal system of control lasted for over 10,000 years. It became the default setting of human civilization. From ancient Rome to medieval Europe, up until almost yesterday in human history, women could not own land, they could not open bank accounts, and they could not vote. The system of property entirely erased the memory of the equal powerful hunter-gatherers we used to be. The spear was replaced by the broom, and the story of the weak, dependent cave woman was written into our history books to justify the cage. It's only in the last 100 years that women have begun to break the padlock. As modern societies shift away from pure physical property and agriculture, the old rules are finally starting to crack. We are finally stepping out of the property trap and remembering who we really are. Not objects, not commodities, not the weaker sex. When we see women today fighting for equal pay, for independence, and for their basic human rights, it's important to realize something fundamental. We aren't fighting for some brand new, modern position in society. We are just taking back the exact same freedom we had 10,000 years ago, before someone drew a line in the dirt.